Joseph Stalin died on March 5, 1953, at the age of 74, following a massive stroke in the days leading up to his death. He had been staying at his residence in Konstevo, just outside Moscow. On the evening of March 1st, Stalin failed to emerge from his room, which was unusual. His guards, too afraid to disturb him, waited for hours before finally entering the room and finding him lying on the floor, unconscious and partially paralyzed. He had lost control of bodily functions and could not speak. Medical care was delayed for nearly 12 to 14 hours as no one in his inner circle dared to act decisively without explicit instructions. When doctors finally arrived, they diagnosed a severe cerebral hemorrhage. Over the next few days, Stalin's condition worsened. He was largely unresponsive and his breathing became labored. He died on March 5th at 9:50 p.m., surrounded by top Soviet officials. His death triggered widespread mourning across the Soviet Union. Massive crowds gathered in Moscow for his funeral, and several people were killed in stampedes. Initially, his body was embalmed and placed next to Vladimir Lenin in the mausoleum on the Red Square. However, in 1961, during Nikita Khrushchev's campaign of de-Stalinization, his remains were quietly removed and reburied in a less prominent grave near the Kremlin Wall necropolis. Stalin's death marked the end of an era of extreme repression, and it opened the door to significant changes in Soviet politics, society, and international relations. At the time World War II was almost over, Hitler was hiding in an underground shelter called the Führer Bunker in Berlin, Germany's capital. The Soviet army was very close, and he knew that Germany was losing the war. The day before, on April 29, Hitler married his girlfriend Eva Braun. The next day, they both decided to die. Hitler shot himself in the head, and Eva swallowed poison. They died together in a small room in the bunker. After they died, Hitler's helpers followed his orders and burned their bodies outside the bunker so enemies wouldn't find them. Later, the Soviet soldiers found what was left of the bodies. They used dental records to prove it was really him. Hitler's death happened just a few days before Germany surrendered. This marked the end of World War II in Europe. Benito Mussolini. By early 1945, Benito Mussolini's regime was collapsing. Italy had surrendered to the Allies in 1943, and although Mussolini was rescued by German commandos and made the head of a Nazi-controlled puppet state in northern Italy, the Italian Social Republic, his actual power was minimal. As the Allies pushed northward and partisan resistance grew stronger, Mussolini recognized that his situation was becoming desperate. On April 25, 1945, Mussolini fled Milan with his mistress Clara Petacci and a group of loyal fascists and German soldiers. They hoped to escape to neutral Switzerland or link up with remaining German forces. Mussolini disguised himself in a German uniform and a helmet, trying to blend it with a retreating German convoy. However, on April 27, near the village of Dongo by Lake Como, Italian communist partisans stopped the convoy and recognized him. He was arrested along with Petacci and other fascist officials. On the following day, April 28, 1945, Mussolini and Petacci were taken to the village of Gualina de Mazzagra. They were under the orders of partisan leaders, most notably Walter Artesia, who used to lies Colonel Valerio. Mussolini and Petacci were executed by a firing squad. Mussolini was shot against the wall outside a rural farmhouse. Petacci, who refused to leave his side, was also killed. Their bodies, along with those of several other fascists, were taken to Milan and publicly displayed in Piazza Loreto. The corpses were hung upside down from the roof of a gas station. Crowds gathered, some cheering, some jeering, and others spitting on or desecrating the bodies. The location was significant because the year before, fascist force had executed and displayed 15 partisans in the same square. Initially buried in an unmarked grave, Mussolini's body was stolen in 1946 by fascist supporters, hidden for nearly a year, and eventually recovered. In 1957, the remains were returned to his family and buried in his hometown of Perdapio, where his tomb still draws both historical curiosity and pilgrimages from neo-fascists. Mussolini's death marked the definitive end of fascist rule in Italy and came just days before Adolf Hitler's suicide and Germany's surrender. His legacy remains controversial potential defined by dictatorship, alliance with Nazi Germany, participation in war crimes, and the brutal repression of dissent. Fidel Castro, the former leader of Cuba, died on November 25, 2016 at the age of 90. He had been sick for many years and had already given up power in 2008 to his younger brother Raul Castro because of health problems. Fidel had ruled Cuba for almost 50 years, first as prime minister, then as president. He became famous for leading a revolution in 1959 that overthrew the old government and turned Cuba into a communist country. After retiring from politics, Fidel mostly stayed out of the public eye, but sometimes wrote articles or appeared at events. When he died, his brother Raul announced it on Cuba television. Many people in Cuba mourned, while others, especially Cuban exiles, celebrated his passing. His death marked the end of an era in Cuban history. He was cremated and his ashes were taken across the country in a memorial procession ending in Santiago de Cuba, where they were buried. Saddam Hussein, the former president of Iraq, was executed on December 30, 2006. He was hanged after being found guilty of crimes against humanity by an Iraqi court. The main charge was the killing of 148 people from the town of Dujail in 1982 after an attempt to assassinate him there. Saddam had ruled Iraq for almost 25 years. From 1979 to 2003, his government was known for being very strict and violent, with many people being jailed, tortured, or killed for speaking against them. In 2003, the United States and its allies invaded Iraq, saying that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. Saddam was removed from power and went into hiding. Later that year, in December 2003, he was captured by US soldiers. He was found hiding in a small underground hole near his hometown Tikrit. After a long trial, Saddam was sentenced to death by hanging. The execution took place early in the morning, and a video of it was later leaked showing the final moments before his death. He was buried near his birthplace in Al-Wajah, Iraq. Saddam Hussein's death marked the end of his long and brutal rule, but Iraq continued to face violence and instability for many years after. Hideki Tojo was a Japanese general and the Prime Minister of Japan from 1941 to 1944. He was one of the main leaders of Japan during World War II, and he supported Japan's alliance with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. He believed in a strong military and wanted Japan to expand its power in Asia. Under his leadership, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, which led to the United States entering the war. As the war turned against Japan, Tojo lost support. In 1944, he was forced to resign. After Japan surrendered in 1945, the US and other allied countries began arresting Japanese leaders who were responsible for war crimes. Tojo tried to kill himself with a gun when soldiers came to arrest him, but he only wounded himself. He was taken to a hospital and survived. He was later put on trial by the International Military Tribunal for the Far East. He was found guilty of war crimes, including starting the war and ordering the mistreatment and killing of prisoners and civilians. He was sentenced to death by hanging. On December 23, 1948, Hideki Tojo was hanged at Sugamo prison in Tokyo. He accepted responsibility during the trial and said he was sorry for the suffering caused by the war. He was one of 7 Japanese leaders executed that day. His actions and legacy remain controversial. Some people in Japan remember him as a patriot who served his country, while others see him as a war criminal responsible for great suffering and destruction during the war. Mao Zedong was the leader of China and the head of the Communist Party from 1949 until his death. He led the revolution that created the People's Republic of China and ruled the country for nearly 30 years. Under his leadership, China changed a lot, but many of his policies caused great suffering, including the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. By the 1970s, Mao's health was getting worse. He suffered from Parkinson's disease, lung problems, and several heart attacks. His condition got very bad in 1976. On September 9, 1976, Mao died in Beijing at the age of 82 after a final heart attack. After his death, the Chinese government announced a national mourning period. Millions of people cried and lined up to say goodbye. Mao's body was embalmed and placed in a crystal coffin in a memorial hall in Tiananmen Square, where people can still visit today. Mao's death marked the end of an era in China. After he died, other leaders slowly changed many of his policies. Some people in China still admire Mao for uniting the country and making it independent, but others remember the suffering and deaths caused by his rule. His legacy is still debated both in China and around the world. Pol Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge, a brutal communist group that ruled Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. Under his rule, the government forced people out of cities, closed schools, banned religion, and sent millions to work in the countryside. Many people died from hunger, disease, overwork, or were killed. Around 2 million people, about a quarter of Cambodia's population, died during his time in power. This is known as the Cambodian genocide. genocide. In 1979, the Khmer Rouge was removed from power when Vietnam invaded Cambodia. Pol Pot and his followers escaped into the jungle and continued fighting for many years, but they were never able to take back control of the country. By the late 1990s, Pol Pot's power was almost gone. In 1997, his own group turned against him and put him under house arrest deep in the jungle. Pol Pot died on April 15, 1998 at the age of 72. He died in a small jungle village near the Thai border. While still under house arrest, he reportedly died of a heart attack, though some people believe he may have poisoned himself to avoid being captured and put on trial. His body was quickly cremated on a pile of tires and wood. Pol Pot was never arrested or put on trial for the genocide. His death ended any chance of holding him personally responsible in court. Many people in Cambodia and around the world were angry and sad that he never faced justice. Today he is remembered as one of history's most cruel and deadly dictators.